you're not already subscribed to this channel, do so now and hit the bell icon so that you can be notified when new videos are released. Also, if you're already subscribed, check and make sure that YouTube hasn't unsubscribed. Also, be sure to hit the like button. The white supremacists hate that. Now, that said, right off the bat, I'm going to start by saying that for the slow coasts in the room, the people who don't listen very well or who like to argue for argument's sake, this video essay is not about Ahmaud Arbery. What I'm going to be saying and the ideals that I'm going to be expressing, this is not about him. Just like what I was saying about R. Kelly and Me Too was not meant to be support for R. Kelly any more than I was supporting Bill Cosby. White supremacy simply uses these individuals as proxies. And there are some black folks who simply do not understand that pig simple concept. Now, where Ahmaud Arbery is concerned, his family's laying low right now. You haven't been seeing his family jumping in front of the cameras. You haven't been seeing them raising hell. You haven't been seeing them making an issue of the obvious racial nature of this. I, in particular, want to see this from them. If they recognize what's going on, they also recognize that they need to be the ones leading the charge on this. Saying nothing and their moral cowardice is unacceptable. But that's not to say that this has nothing to do with us. Some black people will look for any excuse, any out, to avoid having to call out and take on white supremacy. So they'll try to pervert the principles of being on code. And these are the people who will say, well, why is it that you're talking about R. Kelly? Why is it that you're talking about Bill Cosby? And they'll try to claim that if the family of a murdered black person doesn't call out the white supremacists, then that means we do not have anything to say on the matter. No, what it means is we don't make a cause out of the specific killing of Stephon Clark or Botham Jean or Ahmaud Arbery, because if their family fights against our efforts, it makes fools out of us to ride for them. That is the reality. We take a hard-nosed approach to our power. And as I keep telling you, power is used as a shield long before it's used as a sword. And defense, that is the very heart of this video essay. That's what this is all about, defending ourselves. You see, we can recognize and call out the motive behind these anti-black murders without letting ourselves become useful tools for some Negroes who are hoping to get sleaze merit to help them finesse a settlement check from the city. We don't play dumb with the white supremacists or with any self-interested Negroes who look at their dead family members as being nothing more than a quick and dirty come-up for themselves. So we are going to cite this latest murder as yet another chapter in white supremacy's race war against us. We're going to be calling this out as a case study in the ongoing anti-black race war being conducted against us. But what we are not going to be doing is we're not going to be backing up sleaze merit, and we are not going to leave out that the family is not doing what they are supposed to be doing under these circumstances. We are going to be mentioning this latest murder to a truth, but not to a fault. It's undeniable the white supremacists are stepping up their efforts. Even in the midst of a so-called pandemic, they are nonetheless trying to find any black people who they can pick off. And with this latest incident, you see that there has been this dangerous new escalation in the white supremacist administrators' efforts to try to normalize the killing of black people across the board. The Nazi states of America are trying to take a big step toward the final solution to the black question in America. This is the official deputization of white citizens to kill black people. These two inbreds who murdered Ahmaud Arbery, they didn't make some half-baked self-defense claim because they saw what happened to Amber Geiger and Michael Slager when they tried it. These guys understand that you have the regular forces of white supremacy, the ones who the government has put guns into the hands of, police domestically and the military abroad. and you have the irregular forces of white supremacy. That happens to be these race soldiers running around, whether it be white Hispanics like George Zimmerman or these two refugees from the movie Deliverance. So, since they knew that a self defense claim simply wasn't going to fly, they decided that when they ambushed Ahmaud Arbery, they would instead claim citizen's arrest. And this was not some spontaneous thing. These white supremacists, you can tell the DA and the local so called politicians, who are nothing more than white supremacist collaborators, you know that these guys talk about this stuff and they make it clear to one another, hey, we got each other's backs in this case. And when you go out there and strike a blow for white supremacy, we got your back. You're covered. Nobody's going to do anything against you. At least if anyone tries to, we're going to be throwing all kinds of pitfalls and trap doors and all sorts of roadblocks in the way. We're going to try to make it as difficult as possible. We're going to be pulling every stunt and every maneuver that we can to try to make it where you are as protected as we can, because we're the ones who are supposed to be carrying out the judicial processes. And well, we're just going to decide that there's not going to be any prosecution, which is exactly what happened with this first DA. And they knew exactly what they were doing. These white supremacists planned this stuff out, by the way. I've been pointing out to you how you've had these well-heeled, very well-off financially white supremacist organizations who have been trying to break the quarantine. And they've been doing it for their own personal reasons, having nothing to do with any sort of pleas of personal liberty, etc. The white supremacist doesn't give a damn about personal liberty, his own or anyone else's. He cares about control. Big difference. But the same way that these guys have been setting up little incidents for the sake of either getting some white media attention or in some half-baked attempt to try to lay the groundwork for some sort of lawsuit, as they're trying in Michigan. These guys, they do this stuff deliberately. It's just like with those anti-affirmative action lawsuits. And by the way, the same thing goes with the LGBT community. These guys that look around for individuals or situations that they think that they can use in a court of law, where they can, something that will help them weaponize the law in order to forward their agenda. And the same thing goes here. When Dylan Roof carried out his massacre, you had the judge presiding over the case. He was the one saying that the real victims were Dylan Roof's family. Now, what does that tell you about the so-called justice system? A judge would do that in full view of the world. The white supremacists, they're trying to get one another's little courage up. That's what all of these killings are about. This is them trying to get their little courage up, sending the message, hey, race war's on. This ambush didn't come out of the blue. Doesn't take much imagination to figure out that this has been long in the offing. They knew exactly what they were doing. Just like with George Zimmerman, it's a matter of, hey, we all know that we can kill black people with impunity. You don't need a reason, you just need an excuse. So the excuse is that this guy shouldn't have been here. Why? There were some break-ins and robberies. They're trying the George Zimmerman playbook. And you see that they've stepped it up this time. This time it's not even a matter of, well, if only there was video. There was video, and you got the white media getting on board saying, well, even with video, this Ahmaud Arbery guy, he's got a few priors. By the way, they're not asking any questions about the two racists who murdered him. They're not asking, hey, do these guys have any priors? Any brushes with the law? Hey, what about their job history? What about their work history? School history? What did neighbors have to say about them? Did anybody in the neighborhood have any problems with these guys? They're not looking for any dirt on these guys. So even under these circumstances, the white media is making it clear. If white supremacy is going down, well, the white media is going to cheerlead them all the way into the grave. Now, you've had this latest DA, who may be the third to actually touch this case. And because of public pressure, he's saying, well, we should send it to a grand jury. Now, haven't I taught you about the grand jury dodge? About how the grand jury, ordinarily, you would say that a grand jury can indict a ham sandwich, but what matters is whether or not the DA is trying to get an indictment. But none of this matters because you don't need a grand jury. The DA can file charges on his own. He needs absolutely no permission from a grand jury. So why would he take it to a grand jury? Now, usually, Under normal meaning white on white circumstances, a grand jury serves the purpose of basically being a test run. If a prosecutor can't get it past a grand jury, then as far as he's concerned, well, it wouldn't make muster in a courtroom anyway. So it's a trial run just to see, can we get some people to think that this guy might be guilty? It's a trial run. But a grand jury also serves another purpose where black people are concerned with these prosecutors' clutches. The grand jury is used to bury an indictment. Why? You can't ask me to indict Daniel Pantaleo. Why? A grand jury said Darren Wilson. Well, the grand jury is secret, by the way, because of how important their job is. Well, if the grand jury's job is important simply because they say whether or not someone should be indicted, why is it then that you don't have it where it's a secret what the actual jury does? Why is it then that a standard trial jury's proceedings are not some sort of star chamber where you don't know who they are, where they come from, or who voted what? You can do a jury poll at the end of a criminal trial. You can ask the jurors have to announce how they ruled, what verdict they issued in deliberation. But the grand jury is kept secret, and the reason for that happens to be this is part of how the white supremacists who set up the injustice system wanted it to be structured so as to help them. Oh, well, we need to keep up the illusion that there's something resembling legitimacy to this supremacist con game, this quasi-judicial fraud calling itself a justice system. So how do we do that? Well, when it comes time to bury the charges and comes time to do some clearly illegal or unethical or immoral stuff, we need to make it where those things are secret. See, when it comes to the trial itself, you have to have the person give their day in court, which means they get to have they and their counsel get to see everything that's being done against them. So we have to set up something where, defense counsel is not allowed to be there, and the rules are very different here. And, well, you can't tell if the DA was throwing the case or not because the proceedings are secret. No one's allowed to talk about it. Couldn't be more obvious. Grand jury is where the DA either pulls some underhanded stuff to get an indictment where he ordinarily could not, or, as we see with the cases of these white supremacists who kill black people, is where the DA tries to bury the case. They know full well that there's no need for that. But the thing is, this happens to be these prosecutors putting in their bid. That they're announcing to the world, yes, we're getting on code with this. You kill a black person, we're trying to establish that there's not going to be any sort of legal penalty for that. We're making it very clear that, well, we're digging in our heels. You may force us to have to go through the motions of a prosecution, but we're making it clear to everybody we don't want to be here, that this is not something that we're in favor of, and we'll be working to undermine it every step of the way. That's what's happening here. When's the last time you heard of any prosecutor needing a grand jury to indict a black man? When the accused is black, they don't need a grand jury. Now, this is a good time to ask, where are all of the allies at? The Democrats are running around with their much ballyhooed anti-lynching bill, which had everything to do with LGBTism. It had to do with coming up with a rationale to go after black people if some white supremacist claims I'm LGBT and you did something to me and that's lynching, and okay, now we got a legal basis. That's what that was about. What happened to Ahmaud Arbery is a textbook example of a lynching, but you wouldn't know looking at the politicians in Washington. The congressional black talkers, well, they're being real silent right now. They ain't saying nothing. Nobody demanding that we are going to hold up all proceedings in Washington until you get Mike Barr to at least go through the motions of going after these two inbreds. Nobody doing that at all. And you don't have the white media making a cause celeb out of it either. Where are all of the white liberal allies at, huh? Where are they at? Hey, where's that black-brown alliance at? All of you swirlers and all of you Zaddy worshipers and Becky fetishers out there, just out of curiosity, where are your white allies at? Where are the white politicians who are going to promise to put these white supremacists in prison? See, when that racist DA Kevin Steele in Pennsylvania went after Bill Cosby, he didn't talk in vague terms like the governor of Georgia is, with this meaningless chatter about searching for justice and we take this very seriously. He said, vote for me and I'll put that nigger in jail. That's what Kevin Steele said. He wasn't talking in any vagaries or generalities or speaking some sort of mealy mouth mush about vague talk about justice and diligence. He said, I'm you're voting for me for one purpose and one purpose only. Put Bill Cosby in prison. He was speaking without any doubt whatsoever. He was a one-issue candidate. I'm here to make sure that we put a nigger's head on our trophy wall. So where are the white allies at? Hey, Joe Biden, he's so concerned about black people, but he ain't too concerned because he really hasn't had much to say about this. He's definitely not making any sort of campaign promises about what punishments old Joe is going to bring to bear. See, when Joe was in the Senate, oh, he spent an entire career, decades of his life, deciding to weaponize the law against black people. He co-signed the 1986 Anti-Drug Abuse Act. That was the law that put the 100-to-1 sentencing disparity between rock cocaine and powdered cocaine on the books. Joe Biden co-signed that legislation. He wasn't the author of it, but he damn sure helped to get it into law, and he couldn't help push it fast enough and hard enough. And of course, we can't possibly forget that Joe Biden was the author of the 94 crime bill, or as he called it, Biden's Law. So when Joe Biden was a senator, he had all kinds of ideas about laws he wanted on the books to be weaponized against black people. So here you have some white supremacists who murder a black person, and all of a sudden Joe Biden, he has no legislative proposals. He's got no ideas. He doesn't have any legislation that he says needs to be passed. He doesn't have anything to say. He's absolutely tapped out for ideas. Why he can't possibly come up with something now, after he's spent 30 plus years dreaming up all kinds of anti-black racist ideals that he would codify into law. Now it comes time to deal with some white supremacists, and well, Joe Biden, he just can't think of anything. His mind, such as it is a blank. Where are the white allies at? Where are they at? They're being on code. That's where they are at. Silence equals complicity. Silence equals assent. When you are silent on an issue, that means you agree with it, because you know when people disagree with something because they stand up and say something about it. When people are silent on an issue, that's because they are in agreement. Even if they are not happily in agreement, there's always an element of complicity when people refuse to do something about a situation, when they refuse to even say something about a situation that is clearly wrong. What the white supremacists are waiting to see in this circumstance is what the black response to this will be. You have had one DA who made it very clear, I'm trying to co-sign this. We're sending a message. The fact that they do something like this, they know exactly what this is meant to be. This is a bunch of white supremacists on their jihad, and they're trying to gin one another up and trying to get each other's little courage up. That's what they're attempting to do, trying to embolden more attacks against black people. And these are supposed to be the administrators of the judicial system. So are black people going to be looking and going, well, clearly this is a judicial matter? Yeah, you got the DAs illegally refusing to do their jobs. In many cases, I think it won't take much imagination to find that since the father or brother or cousin or what, those family trees among these inbreds are just a straight line. So I'm sure that there happens to be a couple of familial titles missing from both of these idiots' repertoire. But when you have the father who apparently worked with the DA's office, and now you got people saying, well, you should put your faith in the DA. You should put your faith in the DAs and the judges. Oh, I'm sure that they had nothing to do with this. Yeah, they worked with this guy, and they would sit around having beers or moonshine or whatever, or meth or whatever the hell libation these guys prefer. Oh, but I'm sure that these guys didn't sit around with one another just chewing the fat about how they would stick up for each other if one of them killed a black person or two. I'm sure that that kind of talk never came up. And I'm sure it's all just some strange coincidence that this happened 2 months ago, and the DA are digging in their heels and doing everything that they can to slow walk this. They are hellbound to determine, well, we don't want these guys getting arrested. Well, we're going to try to throw every roadblock in the way because we want this to go as slow as possible. We are making a show out of the fact that, no, don't think that this is something we're actually trying to see get done. We're not actually trying to get these guys in prison. Just like with Donald Trump calling the Nazis in Charlottesville very fine people. You had white supremacists like the Daily Stormer and others. They were saying that they understood exactly the dog whistle of that. Not that it was much of a dog whistle. They understood full well that when Donald Trump was refusing to denounce them, when the media was telling, aren't you going to repudiate these guys? Aren't you going to condemn them and condemn their actions? The fact that Donald Trump refused to, they said, yep, he's on our side. Yep, he's sticking up for us. They understood exactly what it was. Donald Trump's silence, or rather his refusal to actually condemn them, they understood, yeah, this is his support for us. We get it. That's exactly what he's doing. The white supremacists understand that the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, they understood this is not a judicial matter. This is an anti-black race war matter. They understand that. The DAs and judges could not be more clear that they're on the side of the white supremacists. Hell, they work with these scumbags. People for over a decade now. What is the price for killing black people? It's a legitimate question, and it's a necessary question. You cannot stop the next anti-black ambush until you first ask why the last one happened. You got to do some examination. You know, they have an expression in the world of business and sports, any sort of competitive arena. They have an expression, control the controllables. We already know the white supremacists are out here stalking and ambushing black people. What is it that we can do to protect ourselves? See, this is the kind of talk that YouTube doesn't like. They take down videos like this because you got a bunch of white supremacists who run YouTube. So family, if you want this message to be extant and to stay out there, you're going to have to fight for it, because the same scumbags who aid and abet in the murder of Ahmaud Arbery, it's the exact same mentality that you got at YouTube. They do not want black people talking like this and going, hold on, we have to take steps to defend ourselves. We have a right to defend ourselves. We have a right to exercise that right to defend ourselves. Some rednecks decide to roll up on you in a truck, or some race soldiers who have decided they're going to pose as police officers, decide they're going to roll up on you. You have absolutely no obligation to stand there and be assaulted or killed. You have every right. In fact, you got a duty and an obligation to protect your safety and to protect your life. These white supremacist racial attacks keep happening because it's a penalty-free crime. Black people do not defend themselves, do not take forethought to make sure that they are ready to defend themselves. Hence, when some white supremacist runs up on you, they understand there's a 90% chance they've run up on a black person who wasn't prepared. They can kill you without any possibility that you're going to be charging them a price for it. There's absolutely no penalty or consequence or any sort of peril to running up on a black person and killing them. The white supremacists understand that black people will sit back afterwards and see if the white supremacist allies in the white media will call them out. Of course they don't. I posted today that you had the Washington Post who was pretending as if they didn't know that there was a video out there showing the murder of Ahmaud Arbery. To hear the white Washington Post tell it, they were saying that the video was disturbing. Did they see the same video that we saw? That wasn't disturbing, but that was horrifying. It was absolutely blasphemous what happened to Ahmaud Arbery. It was reprehensible. It was evil. It was sick. And it demands punishment to the fullest extent of the law. What happened in that video was a first-degree murder charge. These bastards are supposed to be sitting, waiting for that potassium cyanide cocktail on death row is what they're supposed to be waiting for. That is, if you were deciding that this is something that you're going to trust some racist DA to prosecute. The Washington Post decided that they would give the entire rundown of what those two inbreds said. That, in fact, that's exactly what the article that I posted a link to on my Twitter page, that's what it was. It was basically a press release for the two murderers. Well, they said this and they said that. This is the Washington Post, the so-called paper of record in D.C., saying this. And if this is what the paper of record in D.C. says, well, then what that lets you know is this is what established power in D.C. thinks about this. You can bet that Jeff Bezos is not putting out articles and opinions, such as they are in the Washington Post, that clash with what the establishment view is. You can bet that he's not trying to argue with the establishment view. He's trying to reinforce it. And the establishment view on this is, well, if these two white men say that that nigger got what he had coming and that they were justified in whatever they did, well, that means that's all there is to it. They just repeat what these two racist inbreds said. And then they don't even mention, hey, this video disproves all of it. Why would you cite a video and then not refer to it in the article? Because the entire point was this is CYA. Well, you can't say that we didn't mention the video. We did mention it. Yeah, but not in the article itself, you didn't. And of course, you have to talk to some white people, some white organizations. Now, they're not talking to the black media because they already know what we said. So they limit their commentary to Sleaze Merritt and some scumbag from the Southern Poverty Law Center. And all she had to say for it was that she decried the killing of black and brown people. Yeah, the Southern Poverty Law Center, they want to make sure if you mention black people, make sure to mention everyone else too, because, it's not just black folks, God forbid should we focus on black people. This is supposed to be your white liberal organization. By the way, the Southern Poverty Law Center, they classify the Nation of Islam as being anti-Semitic. Same thing for the new Black Panther Party. These guys have called organizations that actually speak up for black people, even if you don't agree with everything that they say or do, but organizations who at least have taken strident stances on behalf of black people, even if only rhetorically. The Southern Poverty Law Center characterizes them as anti-Semitic, or in some cases as basically quasi-terrorist groups. This is the Southern Poverty Law Center. This is who the Washington Post went to for an opinion about the murder of a black man. And of course, not to be outdone, you had the ACLU. Well, at least the ACLU actually mentioned white supremacy. Didn't really go much beyond that, but at least they did happen to say, they actually managed to say white supremacy. Don't know if Sleaze Merritt did. The family of Ahmaud Arbery haven't necessarily heard the phrase white supremacy slip their lips either. Anti-black racism, not sure if that's past their lips either. Not sure what they've said. See, when you have Sleaze Merritt as your mouthpiece, right off the bat, we got a serious problem. Right off the bat, that's a problem. So no, you're not going to bring out the ACLU and the Southern Poverty Law Center to give some mealy-mouthed, indistinct chatter about black and brown people. It wasn't brown people who were killed. It was a black man. These white supremacists didn't go after Ahmaud Arbery because he was a person of color or a minority. They went after him for one reason alone. He was black. If he was Asian, they would never have tried it. If he was Hispanic, they would never have tried it. If he was Indian, they would never have tried it. They only went after him because they understand that there happen to be a lot of politicians and DAs and judges and media people who are on code that they run interference for and help to carry out and cover up for the murders of black people. They don't do this with anybody else. With black people, oh yeah, they immediately swing into action to cover for one another, to make excuses. Well, we got to dirty up this Ahmaud Arbery guy. We got to lay the groundwork for, well, hey, get on code, white people. This guy, we're sending the dog whistle language, the fog. Forget about dog whistle, it's a foghorn at this point. This black guy, you know the script. You guys know the narrative. You know the drill by now. Hey, he was a bad guy. He had some priors. And what was he doing in that neighborhood? And, there had been some talk about break-ins, And, well, you really want to hear what these two killers had to say. You really want to hear that. They understand exactly what it is that they're doing. This country has had 500 years of white people being on code that when a black person is killed, well, no crime happened here. 500 years of that. And you had judges, Supreme Court justices, and politicians who have been the main ones pushing that line. So that's what the Washington Post is doing. They're trying to amplify that. Black people have been playing the game of self-defense by white supremacy's rules. You do that, white supremacy will always win. You need to play the game of self-defense by your rules. You can't wait to see if the white supremacist family and friends in the dominant society will discover religion. They won't. You can't wait to see if their white supremacist allies in government are going to punish them. They've already shown you they're not going to. You can't sit back and hope that the white media is going to condemn them and make a cause out of keeping them in the public eye as an injustice that must be rectified, because they're not. The white media has already shown you what they're going to do. The white politicians and the DAs and judicial activists is what they are. These white supremacist operatives in the judiciary, they've already shown you what they're going to do. They brag about it. The judge in the Dylan Roof case, he wasn't alone. He's sitting there telling you, the only victims here are Dylan Roof's family. Well, the only way to make these racist animals back off is to back them off. Nobody else is going to do it for you. Some years back, I posted a video that was so powerful, so important, that the white supremacist trash who run YouTube, they decided that they were going to take down the entire channel because I posted what the answer to black self-defense is, and to embolden black people to defend themselves. First of all, the Second Amendment applies to black people as well. And even if there was a law that said, well, except for black people, hell, I'd still look and go, you know what, I can't read. You have a right to exercise your Second Amendment right, because it's meant to make sure that you don't have some white supremacists either under color of law or because they think that they caught you slipping on some back road next to their moonshine still decide to ambush you. You have the right to defend yourself. And you have the right to have the implements of that self-defense. You have a legal right and a moral right to do so. Now, beyond that, black people as a group need to also understand that a large part of what makes some black people hesitate, and a lot of black people are on this kick about, well, you know, what about afterwards? Let me tell you something. When it comes to your life, you don't sit there hesitating because what would I do if? I posted the idea that as black people, we need to be ready with a black legal defense fund. Now, some people might poo-poo that idea, but you know what? YouTube took it seriously. I pointed out that the NRA, they post ads on YouTube showing some white man with a gun. They never show a black man, by the way. They never show a black person who's taking action against some white supremacists to say, hey, if you got some white supremacists like George Zimmerman or these two inbreds in Georgia who run up on you, you know, how many times has a black person been murdered with impunity and the cops arrest the black person for protecting their own life, for defending themselves? They don't do that. They only show that with white people because the NRA is obviously a right-wing organization. They're a white supremacist group. Nazi redneck Aryans, that's what it stands for. Philando Castile was murdered. He had a gun permit, and the NRA did not go jihad for him. They didn't point out, hey, this is exactly what the Constitution was meant to protect, and this man's constitutional rights were violated, and we're going to the mat for him. As far as they were concerned, they had nothing to say about that. So what does that tell you about the NRA? And yet YouTube has no problem with the NRA posting videos showing white men exercising their Second Amendment right, except the thing is the NRA's ads are not about Second Amendment rights per se. It's about, well, you kill somebody, you shouldn't go to jail for that. And we want to make sure that there's a legal defense to make certain that your rights are stood up for. You should not have to fear going to jail just because you defend yourself. Well, black people should not have to fear going to jail because they defend themselves. Black people should be ready at all times to defend their safety and their lives, no matter who's trying to harm you. Defend yourself. That's first. Next, that black person must declare that any attempts to incarcerate them for exercising their right to self-defense and protecting themselves from assault or from being killed is a white supremacist, anti-black racist attack. Identify exactly what it was that happened. By doing so, you declare that you recognize the racial assault we're being subjected to, and you are appropriately calling black people to get on code. Now, if you show that you're on code, Now you got something going, but keep in mind, you're not going to be hanging back in the cut. And what's going to happen is, well, there's going to be some conscientious black folks who are going to stand up for you. No, no, and hell no. It don't work like that. I know that there are a number of you who are going to say, well, there are a lot of black people, especially black men, who have defended themselves from white supremacist racist attacks. And the police decided to arrest them in the DAs without a need for a grand jury, by the way, had no problem indicting them. And these guys either wound up being financially ruined defending themselves in court, or what happened was they wound up going to prison for something that wasn't even a crime. I understand that. And here's what you need to understand. When it comes to making sure that black people's right to self-defense is firmly established, understand that we're going to have to do a lot of work. It's not going to be an uninterrupted success story. It's going to be hard in the beginning. There are going to be setbacks and even a few losses because that's what happens when you're playing the long game. Firmly establishing the black right to self-defense, let me go ahead and take the suspense out of it for you. It's not going to be successful the first time. It's not going to be successful the third, fourth, or fifth time. It may be successful the seventh or eighth time. It will be successful the ninth, 10th, or 11th time. See, that's what the lesson is of all the work to highlight these white supremacist police who were murdering black people. Okay, you had the Darren Wilsons and the Daniel Pantaleos, but before long, you had Michael Slager and Jason Van Dyke and Amber Geigers and a few others, by the way, who may not have gotten as much ink as those bastards did. But what happened was things started changing. Yes, you were not winning in the beginning, but in time we began to win. This is the reason why people like Richard Spencer, why they're on a constant jihad, they're looking going, what's the trend at? Where's the trend going? When they see black people standing up and speaking for themselves and making it clear, we're not going to be sitting back and hoping that the same white supremacists who attacked us are also going to prosecute each other. When black people make it clear we are ready to defend ourselves, then the white supremacists look and go, okay, we better go find a soft target because black folks are getting these guys they're starting to show those claws and fangs, and we don't want none of that. That's how you back them up off of you. Show the severity of your intent. The problem with black people is we're not focused on that. We're not organized around that principle. Now, I'm not saying that you need to have 100 men with guns, but what I am saying is that you need to be ready to protect yourself first, and you need to have black people as a group who are organized and around that principle. That way, you're not in a situation where you have two white supremacists who think that they're going to be ambushing you. You got to be ready. There's no substitute for that. When you talk to your family and neighbors and you know, not think, but know, that you got people around you who understand, hey, you can't be counting on people to be coming to the rescue because we can't have eyes everywhere. So everyone's going to have to be ready. And that you're ready and waiting to ride for one another when you can. Hey, if you got to defend yourself, you are going to have a community that understands the moment you say, I was the victim of a white supremacist race attack, these guys tried to ambush me and I had no choice but to defend myself. Now the community knows, okay, he said the words, he's on code. Now the community is emboldened. Now we understand this is somebody who we need to be championing this guy by name, not simply in the abstract or pointing to it as a case study, but by name. Because there is a principle at stake here. These are not isolated incidents. This is part of an ongoing 500-year-long race war, and black people apparently are too timid, or in some cases too opportunistic, to call it what it is. So when you got some black folks who do, these are black people who deserve our full-throated support. You're not going to fly under the radar, okay? Black folks thought they would do that all these decades because we hadn't gotten together and made a covenant amongst ourselves to be on code. That this is what we're going to do to preserve ourselves, to defend ourselves. And when a black person does have to do that, we will have each other's backs. It's not going to be a matter of, well, forgive, oh, eye for an eye. That ain't right, you know, eye for an eye, leave us all blind. We don't talk like that. Somebody has been ambushed by one of these white supremacist would-be killers. and this black person preserves their life, they defend themselves, we're not going to reprimand him for that. In fact, we're going to be looking and going, well, this white supremacist got what he had coming. Those black people chanting and marching, they've proven that they haven't learned very much. None of them show that they've gotten the tools of self-defense and were prepared to use them to protect themselves and their families. Black men in specific have to prove that we're serious about self-defense. The Black Panthers showed up in public and they brought the hardware with them. We must establish a culture of proactive self-defense. Malcolm said 50 plus years ago that black men should form gun clubs, and the Black Panthers were the only ones who got the memo. The white supremacists go out stalking, looking for black people who clearly are unarmed. Ahmaud Arbery was clearly unarmed out there. He didn't have anything where a gun could even be hidden. So the white supremacists were looking to go on soft target. All right, this is the one. We caught one. We caught him slipping. This is the one. We can get him. They look for soft targets. You make sure you got the tools of self-defense. Now you're a hard target. We have to reestablish a culture of proactive self-defense. Racism is a group sport, and so is defending yourself from white supremacist attacks. Because what's going to happen is when you defend yourself, now you're going to have those same DAs and judges who couldn't arrest these white supremacists. And, well, we need a grand jury and we don't think anything wrong happened here. All of a sudden, they're going to be going, oh, you knew what you did, nigger. All of a sudden, they're going to be coming with that garbage. That's where the people come in. That's where the community comes in. That's where it's understood that black people are going to have to help reinforce and to support a newly reinvigorated culture of black self-defense. You may be able to build your own business without other black people, but you won't be able to defend that business solo. I say that simply because for the slow coasts out there who ask, well, what if you ain't got any black folks to build with? Hey, you can do business with whoever you want to stack your gold bars up. Just understand, though, you want to be careful about where you're doing it, because a lot of those people who you have been doing business with, they might decide that a black person with some financial means is something they don't like. And that being the case, you're not going to be able to go to the dominant society or any of these non-black allies to defend your business or yourself. You're going to need some folk who are closer to home. You're not going to be able to depend on a bunch of strangers. You're going to need family. Black people are constantly making excuses for why they can't find anyone to build with, and the do-nothing Negroes hoping someone else is going to take responsibility for feeding and defending them. They're also going to claim not to be able to find other black people who have some hardware and understand the need to have an organized defense. Stay ready, that way you ain't got to get ready. The time to make sure that you've got black folks who recognize where it's at and what it's got to be is not after you've defended yourself, it's beforehand. The time to be talking to other black people and making it clear, hey, who is on code and who isn't. The time to be having those conversations is beforehand, not after. The white supremacists didn't seize the DA's offices in the legislatures. They've been the ones running those places from day one. And so when either the regular forces of white supremacy or these irregular forces like these two inbreds, whenever they run up on us, they know they can depend on their buddies in the DA's offices, and they know that black people will then stand around acting helpless, and at most they'll march and sing, and that's going to be about it. Now, white supremacists went to the capital of Michigan, and they marched into the State House carrying assault rifles. The so-called police there did absolutely nothing about it. They just stood there like so many scarecrows. Now, the question that came up from a lot of people's mouths is, what if those were black men? Well, in the case of the Black Panther Party, it was black men. And they marched with their hardware too. And the cops, they didn't do anything because even though they knew under law, those things were supposed to be empty, right? Well, it's my right to have a gun. And as far as what's in it, that's my right to know. And you don't need to worry about it because the Second Amendment doesn't mean that I have to explain myself to you. So what happened was we had some black men who did what these white supremacists did, which is exercise their Second Amendment rights. Oh, you have open carry? Well, that means everybody's open carrying then. Oh, that's supposed to be for white people. Forget about it. In that case, then I can't read that part of the law. I'm illiterate when it comes to you trying to give special dispensation to white supremacists. I'm illiterate then. I can't read. See, black men were marching on these city halls and state legislatures and even police precincts in some cases, demonstrating long before these white supremacists did. Our problem is it's been almost 50 years since black men showed that they are willing to defend themselves and they're not going to be asking permission to do so. We have not shown strength in the face of white supremacy in far too long. See, the police understand that you're ready to protect yourself and they won't try to pepper spray you when they see you're ready to protect yourself. When they see you're ready to protect yourself, they don't call themselves assaulting you. Did you see the police pepper spraying those white supremacists in Michigan with those assault rifles? No, they were not. Did you see them pepper spraying the Black Panthers either? No, they did not. They don't call themselves deciding that they're going to assault you or even confront you. See, these white supremacists who have gotten their way in law enforcement and the courts and such, they're always looking for soft targets. And most black people think that if they present themselves as defenseless, why, I'm no threat, I'm no threat. You just put a bullseye on yourself. As a black person, you want the white supremacists to look at you and see maximum threat because those are the ones they don't mess with. They go after the ones who they know are not able at that moment to defend themselves, who do not have the implements of self-defense. They understand that. Defenseless black people are the ones who they go after. You're trying to apply your morality and reasoning and logic and ethics to an animal that has absolutely no morality or ethics. You need to be prepared to defend yourself because you have a white supremacist jihad going on where they are prepared to come after you anytime that they think that they can. This is the time for strength, not meekness. The white supremacists are cowards, but they also know black people are desperately trying not to have to actually confront white supremacy. You're not going to be doing that. That's not going to happen here. Evading white supremacy is not an option. The white supremacists are waging open war. They write the laws so as to codify attacking us. They put their heads together to decide, hey guys, let's remind one another of what we're going to do the next time that we catch some black person who we can kill. And then they have these white supremacists either on the streets and many of them in law enforcement who carry out the ambushes against us. We don't seem to want to own up to an organized offense being carried out against us when it clearly is. I'm calling out what is happening, but to be bluntly honest, I'm not writing for Ahmaud Arbery in specific, because I'm not sure if what happened to him was necessarily racial. His family hasn't said that it was. Sleaze Merritt's representing the family, and that's 3 red flags right there. But this scumbag, however, you notice how Sleaze Merritt's singing a slightly different tune this time around? He got beat like a drum for helping cover for Amber Geiger, basically helping her get a de facto plea deal. And this time he managed to put out a written statement where he said one measly, vague sentence about race, and then he hasn't said a word about it since. So Sleaze Merritt understands that that garbage he did last time, all he did was he spotlit himself as being an enemy of black empowerment. He understands that. So now he's trying to give a little bit of lip service to it. That way he can say, oh, I said it, I did say it. That's what he's trying, but he's not fooling anyone. But family, do not do what the survivors of Ahmaud Arbery did. Hanging back, way back, not saying anything, no way. Time out for black people to be expecting that black society in general is going to do what they should be doing. It is the family of these victims of these anti-black attacks who should be leading the charge to call out the murders and call it what it is, call out the DAs and the governmental officials as the anti-black racists they are, who work hand in hand with the murderers. That is the family's duty and responsibility under these circumstances. The prosecutors and police there are acting as accomplices after the fact. Nobody is arresting these animals. Nobody is charging them. This is an organized defense of white supremacy taking place. Some of you have said that the Department of Justice should step in. Were they an actual institution of law enforcement, they would have stepped in 2 months ago when this happened. But the Department of Justice understands their job is to mass incarcerate black people under the pretense of drug laws. All of these white supremacists are on the same page. This is a clear-cut case of a civil rights violation, but just as the racists in Georgia are digging in their heels and trying to see if they can give white citizens official execution authority against black folks, the feds are also looking to co-sign that. So what is the black response to be? First of all, we must resolve that there ought to be a response, and there cannot be any doubt or equivocation about that. The answer to this white supremacist assault can only come from us because the DAs and the judges have already made it clear. They've said, we're not doing anything about this. And the white media is saying, well, we're going to co-sign and try to justify this. You keep wanting to stop white supremacy without a price being paid. You keep trying to figure out how to keep from putting skin in the game or money in the game, and that won't work. You teach people how to treat you. The white supremacists are working together to attack us. And right now, we're playing by the white supremacist rules, sitting on our hands and singing songs and marching and hoping that, well, maybe a DA will do something eventually. See if some legal fluke occurs and the murderers get put in prison for a couple of years, if that. We have to make sure that justice is baked into the cake. We have to make it clear that anti-black violence is not some victimless crime. It's not some crime you get to commit for free. We are not merely hard targets. We're the ones you don't want to mess with. You can't control whether or not the white supremacists are going to decide to pull some stunt, but you can control whether or not you are ready for it. You can find a number of instances that YouTube doesn't want you looking at, where there were black people, particularly black men, who were ready to defend themselves and to defend those they cared about when some white supremacists ran up on them. There are a number of instances there. The NRA is not going to tout that. YouTube's not going to tout that. The Democrats and the Republicans are not going to tout that. They're definitely not going to. But that's okay. We're not asking for their approbation or support, the same way that we are not asking for the right to defend ourselves. We're not asking. We're taking that right because it is ours. And as far as the price of coming after black people goes, it is up to us to decide what that price is going to be. We are well within our rights. But whether or not the white supremacists want to pay that price, well, that's going to be their decision. We don't worry about what the price is that we charge. You let the white supremacists worry about the fact that they will be required to pay it. And we are the ones who set how high the price will be.